Well, I guess it couldn't hurt to try. So this, as you can see, is a video. That's not what I usually do. I usually write shit, but for anyone who's bothering to watch this, you're probably aware of what I'm doing currently. I am sort of marathoning. I guess in a way, yeah, it's sort of like a marathon. The IMDb Bottom 100. So basically, I'm wondering if this is going to be any quicker than writing synopses of these. So I guess I'll talk about the next one that I recently watched, which is Boggy Creek 2: The Legend Continues. I keep wanting to say The Legend of Boggy Creek, but that's not the name of the movie. I've never heard of the original Boggy Creek. I should read up on it. Honestly, I don't think it can possibly be very important because it's about an Arkansas Sasquatch. I'm not sure if you could divine that from the title, but Boggy Creek is about a Sasquatch in the swamps of Arkansas. I really didn't think this would be a Sasquatch movie. Just from the name, I thought it would be more like frogs, like with just random wildlife killing people or something. But, the Sasquatch movies will come when you least expect it. I have only recently started delving into the very deep sort of filmography that Sasquatch has built up. If he doesn't, Sasquatch does deserve his own IMDb page. I recently watched a movie that was originally titled The Untold, but is now being marketed as just Sasquatch. That is just miserable. I believe it's from 2002, and features that dude who was an alien. I'll have to look that up later. But he is absolutely horrible. The whole cast is horrible. Sasquatch barely shows up. But that's not even the only one. There's also another one that was on Netflix for a while that's more of a Yeti-style Sasquatch, like a snow squatch, with white hair and stuff. But I've also got another copy that I recently did a lot of plundering of a liquidating Blockbuster, and found another Sasquatch movie that I believe features Danny Bonaducci and a number of other not really celebrities. It looks like it might have been a wayward attempt at humor, but fails, and in its failure is somewhat humorous. But I have not gotten around to watching that yet. I'll have to look at the name of that one. But in any case, there is this whole subgenre within, I guess it's B-horror, but it's also kind of B-monster. I think that Sasquatch is treated more as a horror bad guy than as a monster. I'm sure people could argue with me on that, but I picture the way Sasquatch is treated in these movies. In this particular one, he's treated more like an actual creature that they're actually trying to track down. But in other ones, it's just it's more of a monster like Frankenstein would be a monster, or Jason, or Freddy, or any of the typical slashers are monsters, because he's treated more like that. He does stealth kills and isolates people and then takes them out. It's not like it's not like Jaws. I think if Jaws is more of a monster movie. And it's certainly not destroying buildings, so it's certainly not like a kaiju. But yeah, Sasquatch. There shouldn't be this much depth to Sasquatch movies. Anyway, what I was talking about was Boggy Creek 2. Very forgettable. I did not find an unriffed copy of this movie, so I watched the MST3K version. Not a bad riff. It doesn't help the movie a whole lot. The one thing, I have actually went through a period of time where I marathoned a lot of MST3K when I was in college, because it's just great background noise for whatever else you're doing. And the only thing I remembered about this movie is how much University of Arkansas stuff is in it. And I'm guessing that I'll have to look it up, the creators must be alum or something. But part of the premise of this movie is that you're following a scientist and his assistants, I guess, who is a faculty member at University of Arkansas, I think. A cryptozoology faculty member at the University of Arkansas. I don't know. It's academic. It isn't. But yeah, they actually go so far as not only is everybody wearing Arkansas hats, it seems like, and they introduce it as Arkansas, even though it doesn't look like what you would think of Arkansas. It looks like Louisiana, at least in the stereotypical way of boggy swamps and stuff. But they even go so far as to film a University of Arkansas football game. It doesn't really need to be in the movie in any way, But for whatever reason, they established at the beginning of the movie that the central character is just at a Razorback game. And they film like a big wide shot of the football game. It's like, look at the football, look at all the Arkansas. And they've actually, I love the shot that they have of him, because I think they actually went out of their way to make sure someone was in the shot wearing a rubber Razorback head. For people that aren't from the area and might not be familiar with this, it's kind of like the cheese heads that they use in Wisconsin for Green Bay Packers games, but it's just like a pig head thing. It's an Arkansas thing. We don't even see it that much down here because we're far enough away from Arkansas, but it's southeastern. I'm familiar with it. But yeah, they just really jam home the Arkansas stuff. Obviously, it would be hilarious if they didn't actually film this in Arkansas. It actually looked vaguely familiar. I've been to that campus before with work, but yeah, it can't be particularly. It kind of reminds me of Miami Connection and how much it tries to force the University of Central Florida down your throat. I can't. Similar to what I've experienced with that, where people try to forget that as much as possible at University of Central Florida. I wonder if it's the same thing with University of Arkansas. I'd have to ask people that I know from there. In any case, I'm sure this movie's been completely forgotten and nobody knows it exists, unless you're someone like me. That sounds about right. Anyway, the movie sucks. It's not interesting. The only really entertaining bit is they run into, at one point, this guy that is the stereotypical backwater hillbilly guy. Big, stout dude wearing overalls and a giant beard, carrying a shotgun. And basically says, "Get off my lawn," with a threatening shotgun thing. So it's like, really, just stereotype. I don't know, in these kind of movies, that kind of person has to show up, right? If you're dealing with swamps and whatnot, it would just be a failure otherwise. Although I don't remember that person in Frogs. I'm not sure if they had one of those in Frogs. In any case, he's about the only actor that's, at any point, can get your attention on screen. Everybody else is pretty boring. The practical effects in the movie suck. You do actually eventually see, I don't know what the Boggy Creek monster, it's not called Sasquatch, but it's Sasquatch. Looks very unconvincing, but also not so unconvincing that it's amusing. Like, if anybody has ever tracked down or watched the movie Elves, that features this just horrid elf puppet thing that's so bad it's funny to watch. In this case, it was just sort of crappy makeup effects and just wasn't, it didn't stick out so much that it was funny. It was just not convincing and not particularly entertaining. I don't actually remember Sasquatch Boggy Creek monster thing doing a whole lot. It's mostly just this sort of academic search to go locate it. They start out by going to this sort of barn where somebody claimed to have seen a Sasquatch or something like that, and they show you flashbacks, which that was actually kind of funny to me, because this guy goes out to his barn and just sees a Sasquatch on the other side of the barn and just stares at it for a minute and then tries to walk away, and then the Sasquatch walks through the barn towards him, and he's just still like, "Oh, it's a Sasquatch, I guess." He doesn't scream or anything that I remember. He just sort of stumbles away. Yeah, this wasn't good. It wasn't a good movie. At the same time, it wasn't so horrible. It wasn't good bad in that there was much to laugh at. It wasn't entertaining bad. It was just really boring bad, which MST3K featured movies can kind of drift that way. But it also makes it really hard to judge as far as what makes a movie like this better or worse than a movie of similar quality. In the sense that not very entertaining, just a bad movie. In my opinion, another movie like that, off the top of my head, is The Incredibly Strange Creatures Who Stopped Living and Became Mixed Up Zombies, something like that. I probably mixed that up somewhere. It ends with Mixed Up Zombies. It's another MST3K featured movie. It was just horribly boring. It's treated more like a classic B movie for reasons I don't totally understand. But now I've already written up on that one. But how do you judge between movies that are just equally boring and uninteresting? And do those movies belong in a list of the worst movies? Because it's not like their effects are horribly bad. It didn't look like Nuki, which shockingly isn't in the bottom 100. But at the same time, the script doesn't stop the movie, it just sort of goes. It just doesn't engage you. It's not that it's, like, overtly bad and negative. It just, it's not that it doesn't work. It's that it's still not interesting enough. Is that worse than a script that just doesn't work and is completely chaotic and doesn't make sense? Is acting that doesn't compel you in any way better or worse than just genuinely bad acting? And I don't know. With the bad acting, I feel like a hammy villain is always better than just a villain that's nobody puts any effort into. But other than that, I don't know. I have a hard time. Obviously, this is in the bottom 100 because it was featured in MST3K. I don't know why. This doesn't seem like a particularly classic episode to me. Why this particular one got enough attention to be that low. It's better than the Starfighters. I've mentioned that one before, which is mostly stock footage of planes refueling. Like, that's a bad movie. Like, as a movie, it is a bad attempt at a movie. The acting's bad, there's just a bunch of stock footage cobbled together. It's barely defined as a movie, whereas Boggy Creek is a movie, there's a plot, I guess. No, there is a plot, it's just not good, and it's not interesting. But at least it is, by definition, a movie. It's a film with scenes that follow in a logical order. But if you judge movies by that, like what's the worst movie, you wind up with, bad experimental films with no structure that aren't particularly compelling in any way. And I'd rather see something more accurate. There's a reason the quota exists for the IMDb Bottom 100. To explain that, you have to have 1,500 votes for a movie to qualify for the bottom 100, meaning it has to have some level of visibility and recognition, theoretically. So that keeps, like, homemade YouTube videos and stuff like that off of and student films usually off the bottom 100, to really bring attention to movies that were really honest attempts at movies to be recognized as the shit that they are. Sometimes that's been subverted. There's a movie that I think is still in the bottom 100 that doesn't belong there because it's just a really crappy YouTube movie, it looks like. What's it called? I'll have to look it up later, but I think there's one or two exceptions to that somehow slipped in there. But, yeah, I don't really know what else there is to say about that. Let me get back to Boggy Creek 2 briefly. I believe, I'll have to look up the ranking. It is not high on the list. I can't, again, this is a hard movie to judge because it's just boring. I'm not going to argue with it being on there. Particularly, at this point, I still haven't gotten through enough of them to really get a figure of where movies should belong on a theoretical bottom 100 list. I'm considering going back and re-ranking them once I'm done with all of them. I can't really argue with this position right now. I don't want it to be incredibly high. I would not want to see it in the top 10 because it's just sort of disappointing. The top 10 movies I'm hoping are all pretty horrible, but entertaining. Although Hottie and the Naughty is up there, and that just looks miserable. Yeah, I'm not looking to any of the other Paris Hilton movies I have to see. The last one, the worst movie I've seen so far was a Paris Hilton movie called Pledge This that was just revolting. Anyway, again, Boggy Creek 2, I can't even keep on topic. It's just, there's nothing to remember about it. It's not an interesting movie in any way. I don't really have any other notes about it, even. It's got, bad practical effects, bad acting, not a particularly well-written story. It crams University of Arkansas wherever it can. It has the premise that a cryptozoological department actually exists and is a thing that's taken seriously. It assumes that you're aware that there are Sasquatch legends in Arkansas. I mean, it even assumes that you know that Arkansas has swamps. I imagine not everybody knows that. Yeah, it's just not, don't watch it. I can't recommend this movie even to B-movie fans, unless you're just an MST3K fan and want to watch an MST3K riff. This isn't even a particularly great riff. Yeah, this one didn't, even the riffs didn't help. I mean, some of them, they can save a bad movie and make it watchable with a riff, and this is not one of those movies. This is just one where you're likely to fall asleep. It's kind of like, except the premise isn't as good, but Devilfish is another movie I watched recently for this. And it was just super boring and poorly paced The writing was crap, the acting was crap, and the riff couldn't help it. Like, it couldn't make it entertaining by making fun of it. And this is in that same quality of movie. Although I would give Devilfish the edge because it has this just balls crazy finale with flamethrowers, and that is the only redeeming factor of that movie. I actually need to look up. I bet Devilfish is ranked higher than Boggy Creek. I'm not positive of that, but I'll have to check it. Yeah, so I'm right at the 15-minute mark, so I guess 15 minutes of rambling about a movie is probably good enough. So yeah, this movie sucks, don't watch it. And that's another one down. Boggy Creek 2, The Legend Continues. Sasquatch, Arkansas style.